Welcome to today's episode of the On the Up podcast, brought to you by Moneypenny. Today's topic is the growing importance of SDR teams, and I'm joined by Moneypenny's very own Simon Burleson, who is our head of SDR. Simon, thanks so much for taking time to join us today. You kick off, just give us a little intro to yourself and your role at Moneypenny.
Yeah, no, good to be here. Thanks for having me on. I've been at Moneypenny for coming up to 6 years now, but specifically in the role as head of SDR for past 3 years. So that's scaled the team from starting with 3 SDRs. We're now 10 in the UK and 2 in the US, and that's growing a team booking 800-900 appointments we finished on last year across the different sectors that we work in. And then from a revenue perspective, we've generated around £2 million in cumulative revenue in that 3 years, but that carries about a lifetime value of around 7.5 billion. So it's been a exciting journey for the first 3 years, and now big plans for growth as we kind of move forward.
Nice, excellent. So some significant growth in the size of the team, but also some key kind of business impacts on appointments and revenue there as well. Really exciting. So I think it would be cool to start off for our listeners of just kind of talking a little bit about what the role of an SDR is. I think it's one of those roles in terms we're seeing more of in business nowadays, but maybe not everyone's familiar with it at the moment.
Yeah, and I think we experience that here as well, because Moneypenny's been a very much an inbound kind of led business for past 22, 23 years almost. So the role of an SDR ultimately is to actually bridge that gap between marketing and sales, because marketing from a demand gen piece really focus on getting those leads coming in from an inbound perspective, but actually there's such a market out there almost that you can go and educate around how our services could be a real benefit and add value, or help solve a problem or a solution that they might have. So the role of an SDR is very much around how can we really make the most of what isn't necessarily coming in, and that's kind of one of the big focuses for us, and that's all done through proactive outreach across different channels, different methods, different techniques. But it's all about that hunting, that driving to go and create something from nothing, and that's a real skill to have as an SDR.
No, definitely. It's interesting you mentioned that kind of point, that how SDRs kind of bridge that gap between, sort of traditional marketing-led lead gen and traditional sales and BD kind of activity as well. So thinking about it from a marketing angle, I suppose in many senses, when we're marketing, we're reliant on that demand being there and people kind of being interested in your product in many ways. Obviously, we can run awareness campaigns, but we're still reliant on someone engaging with those ads. I guess as SDRs, you can send that email or pick up the phone and you can directly talk to somebody immediately as well. I suppose it's a big advantage, I guess, in being able to do that and get them across the line.
There's so much out there content-wise on LinkedIn and on socials. There's always that phrase of, say, cold calling is dead, and cold calling is a massive part of what an SDR does. I think at the moment it's almost having a bit of a renaissance, because we've gone through we'll touch on it from a tech perspective, but we've kind of gone through a massive boom in terms of the amount of tech that's available for in sales, but actually sometimes going back to basics, and that basic being cold calling and the art of having a conversation is ultimately where we've driven a lot of our success.
Definitely, yeah. And you remind me of our first podcast that we recorded in the series with Andy Bounds, who I know who's obviously worked with Moneypenny as well in the past, but something he said the way it was like, people see kind of sales and cold calling as like a dirty word, but actually it's quite the reality for a lot of businesses, isn't it? And I think go back to your stats that you mentioned at the beginning there of how many appointments you generate and revenue you generate. It has a significant impact, doesn't it? Yeah. So certainly a place for that. How do you see the role of like SDRs in terms of like collaborating with a marketing team then and the wider sales teams as well?
So I think from a collaboration perspective, that is the key to almost the unlocking the success of an SDR team. Yes, we can achieve success potentially without marketing, but almost why would you? You've got the team, the resource there almost, that are doing all this activity to create that demand, that to generate those inbound, but actually, like I say, you don't capture it all. So we can go and help capture that as part of that. So that alignment and that process as to what your ICP is, what your target accounts are. We've all got the same goal at the end of the day, and that's to get the revenue, and that's to win the businesses, to get great clients on, to then go and service them in the best way. But the best way to go and do that is by collaborating together and working closely, understanding what everyone's role across that almost that customer journey, that sales cycle can look like, and really harnessing that.
That's cool. I think that the use of collaboration is really important there, isn't it, as you said? And I think even as we think about like ourselves internally and how we're trying to do more of that stuff, and even just in the prelim to this podcast, we're talking about other ways that we can collaborate as a sales and marketing function in the business. And I guess that I think in some businesses there can be a disconnect there, can't there? And it's actually like how you foster those relationships, have the sales team, SDR team, marketing team sitting down together and working on those things is really important.
Yeah, it's almost I suppose to give a bit of an insight as to the 3-year journey that we've been on. The kind of initially we had the luxury of, because we haven't had an SDR team previously, we had the luxury of a lot of data to go at. So we were in almost a bit of a catch-22 situation. Always, we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. So all that kind of data that we had previously, that we had based on client levers or previous inbound inquiries, there was a lot of quick wins there. So we could really go out and almost test to see if the SDR kind of function could actually work. That was almost the first goal. So it was getting that balance of, yes, using some of the quicker wins, but equally knowing that at some point we are going to have to go down that core model of ICPs, personas, really addressing that target market, those target accounts, and then refining that process so that we become much more efficient with the accounts that we do work and how we reach out to them.
It's interesting. Again, you mentioned there about where you start in this process, and you think, like you guys maybe had an advantage because you've got so much data there historically, but then I guess that could be a disadvantage as well, because like you say, it's so wide, and thinking, knowing obviously we both work at Moneypenny, so know the business, the kind of clients and businesses we work with is so varied as well. So you could go after law firms over here, you could go after plumbers, you could go after accountants, like, and everything in between really, can't you? So with such a big playing field like that, how do you guys prioritize as an SDR team in terms of where you're going to focus your efforts?
So one of the models that we moved to recently is kind of introducing territories for the team, and that aligns now with the rest of the sales team based on the sector and the verticals that we work in. But again, more recently, we've really tried to focus on and really looking to build out now that whole tiering of accounts. Using that collaboration that we mentioned before from a marketing perspective, how can we go and really look at which accounts really fit in that tier 1 space? How can we all be aligned with the messaging, the content that we've got, contacting those businesses at the right time, using intent data signals? So that's a really kind of crucial part, that how we're going to kind of look at prioritization going into this year, but then building that out across tier 2 and tier 3. So yes, utilizing some features around automation where you can still go at scale, because we have the challenge, but the opportunity still of working across enterprise accounts and the SMB market. So that's again another element that we have to balance as to how we prioritize our time, how much we're going after the right target market.
That's cool. You also you mentioned there's lots of different interesting topics, I think, in the SDR world at the minute, but the other thing you mentioned there was kind of like tech and automation as well. So really interested to understand like kind of the role of these different tools and I guess AI as well. We hate to be the people that talk about the AI buzzword all the time, but I guess it's more and more prominent and more valuable. So interested to hear how you guys are using tech and AI in your role.
Yeah, there is so much out there. I think that's I've almost got a wish list of potential tech solutions that we can go and incorporate into the team, and you see something new almost every day. But our core tech stack includes CRM. We use a sales engagement platform, SalesLoft. Our data provider is Cognizant, and then we also use Sales Navigator. So for some, they may argue that's quite basic in terms of, but they are the kind of the 4 pillars almost as to what we rely on day to day, and has really driven that success. Growth doesn't just come from people and growing the team. And yes, we've gone from starting with 3 and we're now at 10, but actually the growth moving forward can massively be generated from the tech solutions. How can we, again, just be really refining those account processes, working with RevOps teams, what RevOps tech is out there, what kind of from an AI perspective around more kind of day-to-day and using AI for things like research and being more efficient and productive with applying that to the accounts that you're targeting. Because we rely heavily on the calling element, the cold calling, actually being able to review those conversations much quicker, where we've got snippets of key parts of the call that we can go straight into. That's been a massive help, rather than necessarily having to listen to or read through transcripts of calls that could be 10, 15, 20 minutes long. And when you've got a growing team, that becomes more and more of a challenge. So for me, and the success that I think AI is going to have for SDR is more around making us work smarter, more efficient, and get a lot more learnings from it.
I think with the AI stuff as well, I see these kind of interesting, like, typical sort of trendy tech startups that are like, we're fully AI SDR solution. And I always think, a lot of key themes here are like, you're talking to people, you're collaborating with people. It's like, how does AI have a role, like, in making that outbound call? Like, how would a prospect feel if they were speaking to an AI SDR agent? I guess that's the kind of, some may call it apocalyptic world that we might head towards. Others might think that's a great thing, but it's cool to hear how you're using AI to, like, support the people that, are working in your team day to day and grow what you guys are doing. Yeah. Interesting.
Like I say, there's solutions out there. Everyone's got their opinions. I think personally, you can get more out of it from harnessing AI to support an SDR in their role. And that for me is where the wins are going to come from.
And obviously, so far we've spoken about, a lot of the different ways in which, you're kind of identifying prospects and you're getting in touch with them. I'm interested to talk about as well the kind of like notion of like lead qualification as well, because again, come back to it, you mentioned you're generating 800-900 appointments for the sales team to sit. Those guys are expecting those appointments to be well qualified. If they're not, I imagine you get a lot of grief if you were to put them low quality meetings. So be interested to understand how you and your team kind of make sure that you're qualifying leads properly and make sure they fit what you want.
Yeah, so obviously naturally the goal is to make sure that only those high valuable leads are progressing through the funnel. And how we get there is kind of a crucial part of that day to day. The benefit is then it should increase conversions and like I say, really increase then from a revenue perspective to make sure we've got the right businesses going through at the right time. They're engaged. We've got the right personas and contacts. From a kind of qualification side, actually, this is where what we do as a team might be quite different as to what others do. You see the standard frameworks out there, BANT, MEDDIC, a couple of others that different teams may use across kind of different sales team and across the department. Where we break the mold at Moneypenny and for our SDR team here is that we don't have a standard framework that we follow. And the reason being is that the main thing that we look to qualify an appointment on is, can we understand, or kind of almost hearing it from the prospect on that call, what is it that they're looking to achieve based on their understanding of Moneypenny services? And if we can get to that point, then the role of that SDR is almost to plant those, not seeds of doubt almost in terms of their current processes. It's to plant those seeds of thought that actually they're aware of the problems that they might be having. They know what they're looking to achieve. And actually, if we can get them to that point in a conversation, actually, that's a really great starting point for that. Because we might have, that conversation might have been the very first conversation we've had with them. They might not have seen anything from our marketing team. They might not have seen anything from previous SDR contact. So it could be that very, very first conversation. So the level of interest is there, but you've got to equally appreciate that they are at the very starting point of that buyer journey. So the challenge that you might have, and again, this is, you have to take it with a bit of a pinch of salt almost as well. You've got to, everyone's kind of at different stages and different viewpoints, but in a sense of qualifying that lead, if you go in and talking about things like time frame and budgets and actually you're in danger of overstepping where that prospect is potentially at in their journey. So what we found has worked really well. And again, we have to be flexible with it. We have to constantly adapt what's working. We're taking on feedback from the appointments when they do sit, because quality's a two-way street. It's we've got to equally listen back to the feedback from the appointments, and actually 100%, if there's 2, 3, 4, 5 qualifying questions that we can actually go and start asking in those calls, it will definitely help. But that's been almost the sweet spot that we found for qualifying leads. And I think, yeah, that's worked for us. Let's run with it. Again, not saying that we'll never go and use a framework out there that a lot of people might be open to or aware of, but yeah, that's what's worked for us.
Yeah, it's great. It's cool that you guys have like identified your own process in terms of what works for qualifying the leads for Moneypenny's business, and that gets them into that BD meeting. And you know, as we said before, you're seeing high numbers of appointments, but some good revenue coming for them, so it's obviously working as well. I really like that idea about, you know, you spoke about kind of planting either like, you know, the seed of doubt in their current processes, or kind of, I guess, highlighting the value in the service that you've offered as well. So I think that's something that, you know, on the other side of this in a marketing role where maybe we get SDRs contacting us trying to sell tools, sometimes it's always that what we want to know is like, how's that make our lives easier, or how's that going to help us to do our jobs more effectively? So if you can do that with a prospect in one of your early calls, obviously you're going to get them hooked interested a bit more, aren't you?
Definitely. The whole pain point and challenge is a lot of people's go-to as to how they can then start creating that value. But actually, one of the things that is always a bit of a challenge for the team for this year is, I think we should be really pushing more on what do you want to go and achieve.
Yeah. Because
every business sets objectives, targets, they focus on what they want to go and do. But sometimes, not all the time, is that they don't necessarily know how to get there. So actually, if that becomes more of a focus in the messaging, could we see more success from being more positive on actually a lot of businesses like yourselves are looking to achieve this, or this is becoming one of the key areas that growth is going to come from in your sectors or your within the market. So actually, if this is aligned with yourself, then let's go and have that conversation. So I think from that side, rather than, because again, you've got to be careful you've got to assume that there's all the competition that's out there. There's going to be other SDRs. A lot of the messaging now is, if you're this persona, you have this challenge, we can do this. Is that going to be a fit? So although it's a good approach in terms of the kind of raising those pain points, the danger is that you might fall into the trap of almost getting lost within the rest of the noise. So that's a bit of a challenge for the team that I think we're going to have this year, is to really move our messaging, or be trialing some of the messaging on our more kind of personalized approaches.
I'm interested as well in that journey you mentioned there, because obviously in those 3 years you've gone from, like, there was no SDR team, there's now a team of 10, there's also people in the US, so you've kind of grown that team internationally as well. Interested, like, kind of how you found that journey, what challenges you might have found as someone leading an SDR team, and that other businesses could learn from in that as well.
Yeah, so it was a challenge. I've absolutely made mistakes. We've had to go and obviously really look at actually what has worked, what hasn't worked. So yes, all the success is absolutely brilliant, but it's not been plain sailing from start to finish. I think one of the kind of the learnings from us is we didn't necessarily have all the tech that we started off with, or that we have now when we started. So in terms of that list building and the account approach, and it was very much just kind of almost dealing with what we got, because we had to almost prove the model first. Then it was a case of going to really refine it. I think hiring, recruitment, that piece there equally was I've never done it before. I've never hired someone. I've never thought about that kind of full interview. So yes, obviously we've got great HR, we've got working live teams here at Moneypenny. So and recruitment teams as well. So, but actually, how do you go and find and spot that talent? And actually, that became a process in itself to be able to really think, actually, I know what a good SDR looks like. I know how to be a great SDR. I've obviously done that job, that role myself. So actually, but it's then being able to go and spot that in someone, and almost Is it something, what traits are you looking for that can really go and help the team excel? Are they coachable? Are they resilient? Are they, do they have that drive and that determination that is going to make them create something from nothing? Those key areas that are so crucial to that growth. If we got it wrong, it could have a massive impact on the team, particularly with the size of it. So that's kind of some of the dangers that we were exposed to and the pitfalls that we might have had. But yeah, I think that overall journey, if you put your finger on it, it's scaling from that more generic approach, casting that net quite wide, to now we're on that journey that a lot of SDR teams are on in terms of really becoming target account focused.
And how have you found that process of kind of like establishing that out in the US as well? Like obviously where you're based out of the UK, but you're managing a growing SDR team there as well now.
Yeah, absolutely. So it sounds like it should have more challenges than it actually does. So we took on the first SDR in August 23. That SDR is now the US sales manager. And we then took on the second one in September 23. So we were up to a team of 2. And that was really then, again, proving the concept and proving the model over there. So the challenges only really came in terms of just making sure that whilst as head of SDR, I'm the direct report from a day-to-day level, it's making sure that they felt that they had the support. We almost treat it as one team. So UK and US SDRs, we are one global SDR team. They share ideas, they share knowledge, they're sharing calls, they're giving feedback. We do weekly training sessions that we're all on. So it's a close-knit team, even though that we are in across 2 countries there.
Interesting. And you mentioned obviously when you said about hiring there as well, you know what a good SDR looks like to you and the team at Moneypenny. Like, are there certain characteristics that you could say like define a good SDR, or at least what you look for when you're hiring an SDR role?
First word that comes to mind is resilience. We can't escape it. It is a tough job. It is there's some days 60, 70, 80 calls a day. You might only go and get 1 connected call. So it's how you manage that. Obviously not every day is like that as an SDR. You can then go and have the complete flip side, and you could be speaking to 10, 11, 12, 15, 20 people on really fantastic days. Resilience is a key one, because you've got to be able to manage those ups and downs as that you're going to experience. Curiosity, I'd say, is a key one. Again, it goes back to that point around we create something from nothing. No one's going to do this job for you. No one really is going to say, yeah, I'm ready for an appointment. You've got to go and create it. You've got to create that need, that value. You've got to understand it. You've got to drill home those kind of reasons why. So that curiosity and that drive is, I'd say, another key trait. Emotional intelligence, again, it links to resilience, but that whole piece around, look, how you manage yourself, how kind of day to day, that has such an influence in how successful that you are. But then I think the kind of final one for me would be more around coachability. Being able to say, it's wanting to learn more, but then equally being able to be able to take feedback in a really positive and constructive way. And that's always the aim in terms of any feedback that we do give as a team. You're always saying, look, this is what was great on the call. However, this achieved this, but if you might go and try this, you might actually get a completely different outcome or result. And that's where those learnings come in. So that coachability piece, but you've got to want to learn. That's there's very different. That's very different from just learning. You've got to actually kind of really want to learn and then go and apply it, I would say.
Excellent. So there's lots of cool, interesting insights there on the traits of good SDRs. The other thing I was thinking as you were talking there is, imagine someone's listening to this podcast today, business owner or sales leader, and they're like, great, we've got good like inbound leads coming from our marketing team, but we want to grow that further. We want to start an SDR function. Obviously, you've been on that journey now over a few years. Like, what do you think are the most important things, kind of like day one, now that you would want if you were doing this all over again?
Over the long term, it has to be a built-in strategy as part of your whole go-to-market strategy. There's arguments almost, or you see every now and again, should SDR teams potentially even sit with under marketing. My view is absolutely kind of not we should be well within sales, but that collaboration piece is massive. So I think that is a kind of a starting point. Really think about the long-term goal. What's the strategy? Where do you want to be in a year's time, in 2 years' time? Does it fit with your objectives as a business? Yes, there'll absolutely be some quick wins and some shorter-term goals that you can go and achieve relatively quick, but you have to make sure that, is this going to work for your business? Does it fit the model? Can it fit within the go-to-market strategy? And then everything that we've talked about around planning it out. It's, yes, you have to go on that journey almost and learn what works, what doesn't work. But the more you can build in processes and think about what has worked for other businesses, what has worked for other teams. You look at some of the businesses with the highest growth. They've got some of the SaaS firms. They've got huge highly successful and huge SDR teams that almost are at the core of that growth. But that stems from a complete alignment from marketing through to sales and SDR and bridging that gap, and then back into the BDs and that whole process, and then going into the kind of client support and delivering the great service. So long term, take that viewpoint and stick with it. It's you might not get results for a couple of days or weeks or months, but actually then before you know it, there's a flurry of results coming through. And that was I think it took 3 months before we got first revenue on the board as an SDR team. So believe me, those conversations were tough in the first January, February as to, this is where we're at. We've got some great appointments and we know the sitting, but it's that understanding your lead life cycle as well, because that's for a business that hadn't had an outbound team, SDR team previously, we didn't know how long it took for an SDR appointment to convert. So we got to a point where it worked out. It was actually kind of double the time, the lead time frame. We've massively reduced that down now, and that's again just another area that we can go and really look at and push and work with the rest of the sales team to say, right, how can we improve that kind of collectively and together? So
excellent. I guess that for any business owner, sales leader that's starting an SDR team, it's the same kind of traits that you mentioned, needing a good SDR of resilience, drive, coaching. You kind of got to have that same mindset with setting up the team as well, haven't you, by the sounds of that? So
yeah, definitely.
Really interesting. Well, I think that's a great point to wrap up. I think there's been some fantastic insights there, and it's nice to finish on a note of kind of what businesses could be doing to implement an SDR team. So wrap up by saying thanks so much for your time. So it was really, really interesting.
A pleasure
chatting to you today. Lots of people to take away, probably lots for me and you to take away as well, about how we can create better feedback loops between our marketing and SDR teams and stuff like that as well. But it's been really great to speak to you. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the On the Up podcast, brought to you from Moneypenny. Stay tuned for our next episode coming soon.